What's up guys, welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge, with a couple bonuses from r/PettyRevenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called, How I Became Manager of My Store. I started working at a cell phone store back in 2015 and quickly learned how to sell and became one of the best sellers in the company. I worked with several people at the store, one of which was the manager in question, who I will refer to as Douche from here on out. So, Douche could not sell to save his life. He was absolutely terrible and walked even some of the easiest sales. He also tried sabotaging a lot of my sales because I was performing and he wasn't. Some time goes by and I was learning operations of the store and became assistant store manager. After about a year there, another company bought them out, authorized retailer for those who know what that is, and cut our commission pretty hard. Several of us jumped ship and worked at a different carrier. Meanwhile, Douche is still working for the company and slowly working his way up. He managed a couple smaller stores for a while. In this time period, I worked several different jobs, including some wireless sales and then car sales. After realizing I was making more money at the cell phone store, I was at a bad dealership, I called up the district manager and got to talking to him. At this point, there was a different but equally as terrible manager in the store. I sat down with both of them one day for lunch and hashed out what it would take for me to come back. This district manager had also promised me management before I had left once the position became available. Well, after being back for a month or two, the manager had been moved to another store and I was the temporary manager. So after doing that for about a month, they brought in Douche. Now, let me tell you about Douche a little bit. He is an arrogant booty hole whose parents pay for a majority of his bills. He is super entitled and can never be wrong. He will openly mock you on your intelligence in front of everyone because he sees himself as smarter than anyone in the room, even though he probably was one of the dumbest. If you tried to correct him on a sale, he would yell at you in front of everyone. He believes he is God's gift to Earth. After they brought him in, I was still running everything in the store. I was training every new employee, doing all the store operations, etc. I was making it well known to the upper management that I was actually the one running the store and was responsible for its performance. But he took all the glory and the paycheck, bragging how he is running the best store in the company and that it's all him. But over half of the numbers the store put out were mine. I was single-handedly hitting the metrics for him to reach bonus. Now enter my friend. My friend can sell just as well as I can, and Douche was very threatened because he thought we were coming after his job. Which we were, of course, because he's a douche. So he decides he is going to try everything he can to get us fired. He was writing us up for the dumbest little things, and eventually he ended up getting my friend fired. He had all the other employees write statements for a verbal altercation my friend got in with a customer. He then was asking the other employees to try and get me to look at their statements. It was very obvious what was going on because 3 different people were being persistent on trying to get me to read these statements. One coworker in particular was responsible for reporting my friend to HR, which got him fired, and she was now helping him go after me. Keep this in mind for later. After I refused, he just decided he was going to tell HR I did anyways. So I was pulled into the back by Douche and my district manager and was told I was being investigated for sending my friend the confidential statements, which I didn't do, of course. They spent about a good couple hours reviewing cameras trying to catch me taking a picture of the screen, which they didn't find. So at the end of it all, I was cleared and they had no proof of me doing anything wrong. There were other little incidents that I knew were traps to try and get me in trouble, but I didn't fall for any of them. I did everything by the book. I covered my ass with every little thing I did since I had a target on my back. I knew it was a matter of time until one of us was going to go, and I decided it was going to be him. For about 3 months, I sat and watched every little thing he did. He didn't know it, but I had a log of every infraction he made, most of which was nothing big enough to get him fired. Then he started making some very big mistakes. He was disappearing for several hours on the clock, One day he left for 6 hours to help his girlfriend move while still on the clock. I waited until the pay period was over to make sure he didn't submit a time adjustment. Strike 1. The next, he was letting customers out the back door. We have traffic counters on our doors, and part of the way he got paid was close rate to traffic. This was now commission fraud, as his numbers were inflated. Strike 2. The final blow was his dumbest move yet. A customer about 2 months prior had ordered a phone and never picked it up. Douche then had a business customer come into our store looking for the same phone, which was just a $60 flip phone. He told his business customer that he would just give him one for free. He gave him the other customer's phone, so now he just stole from a customer. Strike 3. The setup. After Douche got done bragging about what he just did to me, because he thinks he's smarter than everyone, I immediately went to work. I was finally able to contact the customer. The customer just so happened to be the girl mentioned earlier who was working with him to try and get me fired. The customer came in to pick up her phone. I made sure it was a day that the 3 of us were there. The customer was elderly and was in the hospital for almost 2 months. He has very well screwed himself now. As he tried to figure out what to do to get out of the situation, I am in the coworker girl's ear on how he gave it to another customer for free. He then asked the girl to go in half with him to replace the phone, which made her mad. I convinced her to report it to HR since if I did, it could be considered retaliation for getting my friend fired. She calls HR and I told her that she can list me as a witness since I was there for the whole thing. About 15 minutes later, I get a phone call from HR. I explained the whole situation to them and they asked me if there was anything else they needed to know. Well, since you asked, and I just went down the whole list. I had added up all the time he stole from the company, the customers out the back door, as well as some other things. Now Douche is being investigated. This takes a bit of time. In that time, we happened to get a new district manager. The district manager's first day at our store was to fire Douche. I immediately text Douche and go, "Damn, what happened, man? I heard you got fired," as if I had no idea what happened. He then went off on me telling me that I'm a butthole and he knows I reported him, blah 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 blah. It was so sweet to have beaten this entitled butthole. I got into the new district manager's ear about the position and immediately assumed the operational responsibilities again. The best part was earlier, Douche told me there is no way I'd go from rep to manager at that store, top tier store. I'd have to start at a lower store. Well, guess what? Not only did I get him fired, about 2 weeks later, I get promoted to that top tier store. Last I heard, he went and worked at some cell phone kiosk before taking a retail job at Apple. I later fired the girl who was trying to help Douche get me fired. She was still trying to get me in trouble, so she put a target on her back. I was able to fire her with cause eventually. I also fired her dumbass friend for theft. I was the manager there for about 2 years and finally got out after they kept lowering their commissions time and time again. Working at a much better place now. Man, I love these stories. There's nothing better than hearing how some person systematically destroys an entitled individual. That was a train wreck to get out. This story's called "Cheated Out of $5,000 and Lost My Watch, Get Arrested for Suspect Sale of LSAT Answers." In 2012, I had traveled from Australia to the US to visit some longtime friends. One of them was currently studying law at the time, and he was invited to a house party with his other law buddies. I tagged along. The night was young and everyone was just having a drink. The usual banter, mostly talk about law crap I really had no idea, but a few of these guys were talking about one of the men at the party who apparently sold LSAT answers for quite a lot of money. Later on in the night, they started a private cash table poker game, and as a quite savvy person at poker, I asked to join, and there was no issues. We were playing a hand, and the pot had built up. I chucked in all the cash I'd had and my expensive watch, ha 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 ha. It was just me and 5-4's Pac-Man. There was $5,000 in the pot, and I had a 4 of clubs and a 2 of clubs. The river card had just come down, leaving a pair of 2s, a pair of 4s, and the river card being a king. I had a full house and was very positive I'd win. But when it came time to reveal cards and I revealed my hand, the 5-4's Pac-Man I was playing against laughed and revealed his hand. he had pocket 4s, giving him 4 4s, which didn't make sense because there was only 4 4s in the pack, and this pack had 5. So basically, I'd been played, and I didn't have my Blue Eyes White Dragon. In a small outrage, I announced he was cheating, to which he took the entire pot and said, "What are you gonna do about it? Our place, our rules." To which all his mates gathered around him, and I'd just been left short out of cash. I was then kicked out pretty quickly. My friend that I came with caught up and apologized and said he didn't know that would happen, but I had another idea in mind. Early morning, I got up, left the place we were staying at, and made my way down to the local payphone, called the closest law school I could determine, and anonymously tipped off that a person by the name of 5-Force Pac-Man had been boasting about selling LSAT test answers. I provided the address we went to. The call was short. I went back to the place I was at and then flew home a few days later. About 3 weeks later, I get an email from my friend that I visited in America saying that 5-Force Pac-Man had been arrested for suspected selling of answers to the LSAT test. 6 months later, after that 5-Force Pac-Man, it was apparently found that he was a liar and what he'd been selling people was just absolute rubbish answers to the apparent test. He was kicked out of the house he was in and apparently poor as F roaming the streets. I don't know if he got any criminal charges. Honestly, if someone... he's selling fake answers plus he's cheating at poker? Okay, come on, that's the man's character. This story's called Me versus the Rude Old Lady at My Church. For context, I play piano for a local church. I go every Sunday, have been since I was 13. For the most part, I love everyone at the church and they love me, but I'm quite a bit younger than most of the members. This Sunday, I was playing piano for choir practice. Enter a rude old lady who sings in the choir. We'll call her Betty. Betty believes she's God's gift, pun intended, to music. Personally, I think her singing is crap. Betty stops the song to yell, she missed a note, that's why I'm off." She was referencing me. Firstly, there were no missed notes. Secondly, she knows my name, yet always refers to me as she, as if I'm not sitting right there. She does this one more time during practice, causing me embarrassment. I vowed revenge. We had a Thanksgiving potluck lunch after the service. Everyone had signed up for different dishes. To ensure there was enough for everyone, many people had the same dishes. Betty had signed up for cranberry sauce. Like everyone else, I was excited and hungry. We all anxiously lined up for the feast, which was being served buffet style. Betty ended up next to me in line. As we're approaching the table, Betty proclaims that one of the cranberry sauces is hers and specifically points it out. She bragged about how it was a family recipe, how long the prep took, how nice the cognac that she used was, blah 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 blah. As she was engaging everyone to choose her cranberry sauce, my revenge plan began to form. Cranberry sauce really isn't my thing. Normally, I would either skip it entirely or take a little bit just to be polite. This time, however, I took a large scoop and proclaimed how much I love cranberry sauce. Then I took scoops out of the other 2 cranberry sauces available. I proceeded to take scoops of most all the other dishes as well. My plate was noticeably full. I took a seat at the same table as Betty. Everyone began to eat. I ate every bite of food on my plate, including the cranberry sauces, which wasn't pleasant, given I don't care for it, but I managed, except the sauce made by Betty. That I took a single bite of and then promptly left on my plate untouched. She noticed. When she asked why I wasn't eating the rest of my sauce, I, quote-unquote, quietly told her I found a hair in mine. Let's just say most of the plates ended up looking a lot like mine. Okay, there are gonna be those that shame you for wasting food and all that stuff, but I think that was funny and I appreciate what you did there, man. Or girl, whatever you are. This story's called Wake Me Up Mowing the Lawn at 7 a.m. on a Saturday? I'll be sure to make you re-wax your car. This happened years and years ago, while my mom was on active duty in the Air Force. My parents had moved into base housing because the cost was lower and they could afford it. Now this base is in California, so during summer months, there is almost always a drought. Despite this, military regulations state the lawn must be green when your home is inspected. So every few days, my dad would put out a sprinkler to keep the grass from going dormant and looking like crap. As I said earlier, the grass had to be kept green, but it also had to be kept neatly trimmed. So about once every week, the lawn needed to be mown. Now, my dad would usually do this in the early evening after the sun had gone just below the tops of the trees, but before the temperature dropped too much. Their butthole neighbor, however, liked to mow the lawn between his house and my parents at exactly 7 a.m. each Saturday morning. Unfortunately, this woke up my parents because of where their bedroom was. My mom tried asking nicely for the neighbor to maybe wait till 8 or 9 so they could at least get a little extra sleep. But neighbor was a schlong and ignored them. Now, this neighbor had a prized possession, a beautiful new car, which he babied every chance he got. Every week when he got done mowing, he'd wash and wax his car. I should mention that the way the street was laid out, the property where my parents had to water formed a wedge, with the point in the front lawn. Anyway, once the neighbor was finished waxing his car, my dad would make a big show of adjusting the sprinkler to water right down the property line, then going inside for a bit. Sadly, the sprinkler tended to wander after a little bit, and since neighbor's driveway was right in the property line, oops, looks like his car got a lot, sprayed by hose water. Oh well, guess he'd have to wax it again. Man, I really don't understand how people can do that because I would just feel so bad. If someone's asking you nicely to just wait an hour, you have an excuse to procrastinate so you can chill. Or you can get an extra hour of sleep, you know? Anyways, I'm glad this was some good harmless revenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.